Take us through the announcements today, surpassing of $20 billion milestone for e-commerce exports. And that is well ahead of time, well ahead of the deadline that was set by you. What are the big announcements from today's event?
Yeah, so it's been a decade now. 2015 is, when we started. And, when we started with around 100 sellers. And when we started, interestingly, we said that, we're going to enable $10 billion in cumulative e-commerce exports by 2025, right? Even that target, we did not have it worked out to the last dollar. But, we had two firm convictions. One, that India has a lot to offer to the world, both in terms of innovation, export and manufacturing strengths. And we also knew the power that technology had in enabling businesses. So we were actually sort of proven right in these convictions when we decided to revise this target and make it double in 2022. This is a true story. We said $10 billion to begin with. 2022 is when we actually revised it, doubled the pledge, and made it to be $20 billion. I'm very happy to report that we have surpassed it ahead of time. And in fact, in 2024, we had already made an announcement, for our future pledge that, we are actually going to achieve $80 billion in cumulative e-commerce exports by 2030.
Were there any positive and negative surprises along the way in the last 10 years? And what are the big trends that you saw in the India export market?
I think that one is the numbers, of course. The numbers by themselves are good and, they're impressive. But if you look at some of the structural things, that are happening, the structural trends, that we've been seeing over a period of time, right? What we are very enthused by and, encouraged by is that the story is as deep as it is wide, right? From 100 sellers, we have 2 lakh sellers, right? 2 lakh plus sellers. And, these sellers are present across various states, right? It's not as though one state dominates, it's across, states. Sellers on Amazon Global Selling India are actually present from 200 plus cities, right? And it's not only the Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalores of the world, of course, they do figure in that list, right? But, you have sellers from Badohi, you have sellers from Panipat, from Junagadh, from Tirupur, from Crore, right? So it's the trend that we are seeing, and, that to us is, perhaps the most encouraging, part of it, right? And apart from the numbers, what really keeps us getting out of the bed in the morning is that sellers and entrepreneurs from tier 2, tier 3 towns in India have actually been able to create a global name for themselves. And, we've been able to be part of their journey, right? And, I think that is perhaps the most exciting, most positive aspect of this journey, because in many ways it is the story of India, right? Of Made in India, of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And, we're actually seeing that in reality now.
Give me a flavor of how the exports from India are turning out. I mean, which are the sectors, which are the categories, which are the cities, which are the large export-oriented cities in India, which are the categories that are doing very well when it comes to the export basket?
Yeah, so it's a mix of both, what have been traditional India export strengths, which is, the cotton-based home textiles, apparel, home decor, and so on and so forth. So, for example, our home category, what internally in Amazon we call as home category, that's where all of this falls under, that has, in a 10-year CAGR view, that has actually grown upwards of, 35%, right? Similarly, our, furniture category, which is all your carpets, area rugs, and so on and so forth, that is growing upwards of around 40%, right? Also, as you know, India also has a very vibrant D2C ecosystem, right? And there are a lot of innovations that our D2C brands are bringing about. And, it is in beauty and, health and personal care, which are going upwards of around, 45%, at a 10-year CAGR, sort of a viewpoint. So I would say that the categories that are doing well are, categories that have been traditionally India export strengths, and, categories that, Indian sellers and brands are now innovating on, and, sort of making a name for themselves. So it's a mix.
Given that US is our largest export market, I'm sure it reflects in equal measure in your export statistics as well. And the question on everyone's mind right now is, how is that mix changing? You have the pulse of exporters being directly in touch with them. What is the on-ground impact of trade and tariff issues on what you are seeing in terms of exports through Amazon?
Uh, So I think to clarify, Amazon global selling has always been in the sense of the word global selling, right? It's not as though we provide access only to one marketplace. We provide access to 18 plus marketplaces via which sellers can reach out to customers in 200 countries, right? So that has always been true, and that stays true even today. That we offer this choice to sellers, and sellers make their choice in terms of what they assess to be their product market fit, and so on and so forth. We are a marketplace, and we continue to provide global level choice. In terms of what we are seeing in seller growth trends, if you look at it, our seller base has grown by 30% over the last 1 year alone. So I think so that trend stays. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I'll ask you one more question on this before I move to other things like AI, which are equally important. Your $80 billion target by 2030 comes at the beginning, or at least of this 5-year window of the tariff and trade negotiations and issues in the largest market, US. Do you see the mix, the basket being very different by the time you reach 2030? And is that factored in your projections of $80 billion? Or do you think US will still continue to be the largest market in that metrics as well?
Here's how I look at it. Long range milestones are never about perfect foresight anyway, right? They're about structural conviction, right? And the question that I would ask myself, and the question that Amazon also asks, is that, hey, are these strengths deep enough? Are they structural, or are they cyclical? And in the last 10 years, we've learned anything. These strengths are structural in nature, right? And we continue to build the right capabilities, which will compound over a period of time, right? So I would reiterate that our structural conviction on this continues.
And in the $80 billion export pledge or target by 2030, what is the kind of infrastructural investments, expansion that Amazon will be making to enable this?
Right. So I think there's a lot of technology-led enablement that we've been doing, right? So I've divided this into two parts. One is the technology-led enablements that we do. The other is the partnership-led enablements that we do. Our FCs are a very prime example of our fulfillment centers overseas are a very prime example of what sort of physical infrastructure that we're actually providing to our sellers, where they can actually send it to our warehouses and send it, forget it, sort of a thing. Technology wise, we continue to invest in a lot of products. For example, we have our own logistics product called Send, which is sort of integrated into Seller Central and their business. We also provide a lot of tools. We'll continue to double down on GenAI related enablements as we go ahead. From a partnership point of view, we continue to work very closely with the governments, be it central governments, state governments, or the government bodies like DGFT, FIO, and so on and so forth. Right. So the last 10 years has been a story of technology and partnership-led enablements, and we'll double down on that.
How are you leveraging AI to support exporters? And there is, of course, a lot of fear of AI displacing workers so far as your own infrastructure is concerned. And one of the things that stood out for me a few days back was the fact that Amazon is talking about, 500,000 of those jobs being impacted due to robotics. And of course, robotics, machine learning, AI, these are reality in the new age era. How do you look at AI from the lens of exporters and from the lens of your own workforce?
I think Amazon, of course, has been in the forefront of GenAI related enablement. You would have heard of our Amazon Bedrock, or the AWS led AI innovations that we continue to provide, right? And in the context of exports, and which is very similar in the context of the journey of a seller, right? So the way we look at it is, what are the stages? What are the each stage of the seller journey? How does it look like? And how do we provide solutions at each stage of the seller journey, right? How do we either provide insights or we provide productivity-led enablements, right? So, for instance, listing is a very big area, right? The other area that we are working on is how do we provide sellers with insights about their own account and so on and so forth, right? So we continue to essentially work on. So the way we look at it is, hey, look at the seller journey, and which part of the seller journey can be further enabled.
How was this festive season in terms of exports this time?
Well, I think that depends on what festival you're talking about.
The entire festive season,
Because
starting from Janmashtami, Ganeshada, and of course your own,
yeah,
festive window
no,
as
no.
well.
The point I'm trying to make is that when you're actually selling globally, you are you're sort of coordinating festivals in different countries across the world, right? So there is one time or the other, there is always some or the other festival going on, because obviously you're present across 18 marketplaces, right? And of course, I think Prime Day is very big, and I think our sellers continue to do well on that. And Black Friday, Cyber Monday is coming up.
What are the big factors that will drive this growth, 4x growth in export target by 2030 for you?
I think the enablements I already spoke about. I think technology is going to be one big part of it, right? The other part is the maturing partnerships that we have with government and government bodies, and the third part is uh, going deeper into India's export clusters and sort of enabling them, because this year itself we have gone to around 10 such clusters to enable our sellers, and we'll continue to do that.
One of the things that you mentioned that stood out for me in terms of the protectionist wave outside was about India's strengths inherently being structural and not cyclical. Could you elaborate on that?
I mean, as I said, I think 10 years, what we have learned is that these are some deep, strengths that we have over a period of time. For instance, the strength in home textiles is not a strength that we developed, in the last year or something. I mean, this is something that's been a strength for a while. And, e-commerce exports continues to sort of exploit those strengths and, double down on those strengths, right? That is what I meant when I said that it's structural and not cyclical, because there is a deep capability that already exists. There's a lot of innovation that is coming outside from India, right? You see a lot of D2C brands innovating, etc. So yes, it is structural, it's not cyclical, and and we are not talking about a story of a year, right? I mean, this is a 10-year cumulative milestone that we are talking about, which Indian sellers and brands seem to have consistently done well over the last decade. That's what I meant, that the strengths are deep, they're structural.
My final question to you is from the lens of a consumer. There are always worries on return policies, on transparency, and we have also seen CCPA sort of crack down on e-commerce platforms, on dark patterns, on deceptive trade practices. I understand that's domestic vis-a-vis exports, but some of the concerns remain the same, whether one is looking at a market outside or market internally within India. Have you done those audits internally to eliminate and remove any such deceptive patterns, dark patterns, which you were asked to do by CCPA?
I cannot comment on the specifics of the domestic market of what CCPA, etc. But I can broadly answer that. Listen, the artifact that Amazon lives by is the flywheel, as we call it, right? And the flywheel works only when sellers succeed, sellers offer the right selection, and customers are happy with the selection that is essentially being offered, right? So we continue to invest into making our own detection processes better and ensuring there is no counterfeit, and this is something that applies across whatever marketplace that we actually operate on.
My final question to you, Srinidhi, give me a projection, a prediction, if you may, for the next year. What are the top 5 trends that you're likely to see in your own area, which is exports?
No, I think the trends are pretty much evident. I think that they are solidified enough for us, not to sort of gaze at a crystal ball or anything, right? I think the categories we already spoke about, and I think what we are going to see is a lot more, perhaps coming from some of the export clusters, that we spoke about. And if the vibrancy in the D2C ecosystem is anything to go by, we are also expecting to see a lot of innovations, from that side. So I think that home textiles, apparel, and health and personal care, I think these are the three categories that will continue to hold us in good stead, as we go ahead.
And will you proactively look at diversifying, which is also in sync with the clarion call by the government now, so far as our export markets are concerned, and not to put all our eggs, in one basket, quite literally an export basket in this case?
See, Amazon, at the end of the day, is a marketplace. And what we do, and I think what we do very well, is that we continue to offer choices to sellers. And that is what we do in Amazon Global Selling also. So we continue to offer the choice to sellers, and sellers will choose the marketplace that they think has the best return in the long term.
Thank you so much for speaking to PTI, Srinidhi. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.